Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today on this Monday morning. My name is Sonia Siddiqui and we're bringing you another RBC featured webinar, and joining us again is Vivian Lee. So welcome back, Vivian.
Hello.
And Vivian's got her friends with her, and we've got Annie and Hadi.
Hello.
Hi
Hello.
guys.
Hello, everyone. I just want to, Sonia, if you could go to welcome to our webinar series. And this is actually, I have been thinking about this webinar for some time because the language and the culture barrier is not only the barrier when we look for a job, but also for a lot of immigrants, it's very important to tackle that when you're going through your career advancement in Canada. So that's why I'm so extremely happy to have my two guests today, Annie and Hadi, with me. I'm going to briefly introduce myself, and I'm going to pass on to them to briefly introduce themselves. So I'm an immigrant myself, and I came around 16 years ago. I remember it was July the 29th. I guess every immigrant would remember the first day landed, right? I remember the light was so bright at 9 p.m. I immediately wanted to fly back to China. Because it was so scary. It was such a scary experience for me. Now, like when I come back from China to Canada, I feel, oh, this is home. Finally, I'm here, right? So it's such a different feeling. And when I go back to China, I also feel, oh, this is home. This is some, old feelings coming back, but still very happy to come back every time. So because I'm an immigrant myself, I went through the same journey as you, and language and culture and networking, lack of network. So that's why I'm very extremely happy to be in a role to allow me to pay it forward and just integrate with a great company that really champions diversity and inclusion. We want to build a diverse workforce. That's why we're here and hosting those webinars. So I'm going to pass it on to my colleague here, Hadi, sitting right beside me, to briefly introduce himself.
Thanks, Vivian. To Canada about 8 years ago, and I can remember the first few days very, very clearly, of course. I'm originally from Lebanon, so I was born in Lebanon and raised there, and I spent most of my time there. I lived for a few years in the UK for my graduate studies before moving to Canada. And I am now very proud Canadian citizen, and I call Toronto home right now.
Yes, yes. Yeah, thank you, Hadi. And how about you, Annie? Your story, just very briefly, because we're going into details later.
I landed in Canada in year 2000 with my husband. Yes, I did remember my first day here, the moment that I arrived in Toronto. I was actually very, very excited to start my new life and exploring the new world, because it was my dream to come over to the western side of the world. I was very lucky to find jobs and started working from then, and also build my family. Now I have two sons. They both were born in Canada and raised in Canada, so I'm now a proud Canadian, I would say.
Thank you, Annie. And we really look forward to the conversation with both of you and learning more about your journey and stories. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about RBC, the company we're so proud to work for. So RBC, I think if anybody is interested in, interviewing with us or developing a career with us, it's good to know that we're one of the largest employers, and we're very recently named the #1 company by LinkedIn, the top companies in Canada, but we're #1. Okay, so we have over 80,000 employees, and we operate in 37 countries. We have different kinds of services. We have personal and commercial banking, investor and treasury services, capital markets, wealth management, and insurance. We also have some supporting functions like HR. I'm in HR, and Hadi is in HR as well. We have technology. RBC is one of the largest employers for tech talent in Canada, actually. And we actually walk the talk for diversity and inclusion. So Sonia, if I could invite you to move to the next slide. I'm just going to talk very quickly about our commitment to diverse workforce. Okay, so usually I ask people this question: do you know that we serve our clients in over 200 languages? And in order to serve our clients in the community in over 200 languages, we need to hire immigrants like yourselves who can speak those languages and represent your communities. So there has been long history in RBC for our commitment to diversity and inclusion. Over 60% of our employees are actually women, and over 45% are in an executive position. So I don't know whether everybody is aware that in Canada, around 25% of our workforce are visible minorities. By visible minority means you're non-white by color and non-Caucasian by race. So a lot of immigrants fall under that category. But in RBC, we have way over workforce representation, we have 35%, and in some parts of our business, like in IT and finance, over 40% of our workforce are visible minorities. So we support our diverse workforce with different employee resource groups. We have over 20 of the employee resource globally, not only in Canada, right, supporting different groups so that people feel that sense of belonging, and they're also supported in their development and in their personal growth. So that's a little bit about our diversity and inclusion, and the fact that we're supporting newcomers like yourself in your job searching journey. Hopefully we'll get some of your joining us as to our RBC family, but if no, we hope those webinars will help you in your job searching journey and help you launch a very successful life here. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to dive right into the conversation we've been waiting for. So you all have seen the very short bio of Annie and Hadi. So I'm going to ask Annie first, because you just won the district championship for Toronto District 86, because this number is a little bit weird, I think, for people who know about Toastmasters. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Toastmasters and what does this mean, like to win the District 86? What is the scale of your victory in terms of the Toastmaster speech contest?
Okay. Toastmaster, I'm not sure anyone has already have a chance to get to know it, but if you are not, you can just search on Toastmaster International on Google. You will find a lot of information there. It is a non-profit organization global-wise, and they are helping people to improve public speaking skills, communication skill, and leadership skills. It has probably 367,000 members worldwide, about 16,000 clubs in 140 some countries. So it's a very large organization, and it works very, very well. It's also very much accessible for all of you if you want to join to be the member, and then you can just search for the club near you, then you will find one, and you can go get as a guest to find more information there. District 86 is an area in the Western Ontario side, and we do have about 4,000-ish members within this district, 200 something clubs, and every year Toastmasters have contests. And I was just gone through this contest called International Speech Contest. So basically, you write a speech 5 to 7 minutes to deliver a message that is meaningful for your audience. And based on that, you will be voted to see who delivered the speech the best. So I had the privilege to be the winner of this one out of 4,000 members in Ontario area.
Oh my God, that's such an achievement, right? So, to your knowledge, has anybody whose language is not the first, like English is not the first language, had any winners in the past, or you're the first one?
In my district, I probably the first first generation immigrants winning this international speech contest. But in Toastmaster, we have a lot of members speaking English as a second language, which I think is more significant because your own growth and your opportunity to improve is more important than the actual winning. So I'm proud to be the one who represent all of you and become the winner, but I would recommend everyone just dive in and try it yourself.
Thank you, and congratulations! It's such an achievement, and we're so all very proud of you. I'm sure, like when you landed in Canada around 19 years ago, that was your dream to become the champion of a speech contest in Toastmasters.
That is not in my widest dream.
So,
Because
tell us a little bit about your experience when you first came to Canada. What was there must be a lot of culture shocks and the occurred situation experiences. So would you mind sharing with us some of your initial experience when you first landed in Canada?
of course. Well, I think everybody who has just arrived recently would feel the same. I felt that the English I've learned in my country is a different language from the English actually was spoken here when I was just landed. Because we study a lot of vocabularies and grammars, but when you came here, and all of them seem so limited, and then you still couldn't do the proper communication to your colleagues and everything. The first thing you're gonna meet is interviews. You want to get a job, so I went through that as well. Luckily, I think I did well with my interview with my English. After I was hired, my manager told me that he interviewed a number of new immigrants, and my English was understandable, and that was the reason I got the job. But
Yeah.
really, language is the first challenge. Again, you mentioned about culture. Culture is a different thing. Actually, it's even tougher than language because it took a lot of time to accumulate the knowledge and the history, everything around this new life, new world. You have to spend a lot of time basically to expose yourself to news, TV shows and movie stars and even athletes popular here in order to get that part of culture. And with English as a barrier, it just make it even harder. But with more effort and time, you can actually get it. So be confident with that. Just keep going.
Yeah, thank you, Annie, for sharing your journey. And how about you? So you came to Canada from UK. Language might be less of a barrier for you.
Yeah. So I did speak English when I arrived. Obviously, a different accent, and I still have a different accent right now. So what I felt was different because even the UK is also a Western country. The communication style in Canada when I arrived, the culture and the communication style were very different, and it takes time to adjust of how people speak. Everybody is friendly in Canada, but at the same time, in my first few months in Canada, even though everybody is friendly, it was difficult to make friends, to make new friends, and kind of getting used to how people communicate. Everyone is friendly and always positive. People it takes time to adjust to, basically. It takes time. Yeah.
I remember when I first came, and if I made a comment, some of my Canadian friends would say, "Oh, that's interesting. And then after I lived here for, I don't know, when they say interesting, they might not agree with you. So you might want to think, so they're very extremely polite, but it's really hard to go deep and say, what do you really mean, right?
And you will decipher all of it.
Yeah.
In a few months, you'll be able to decipher everything.
Yeah, so it's that decipher thing. That's the process that everybody needs to go through, and it's very ambiguous, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember I had a lot of culture shocks when I first came from. Basically, so how they count money here, how they count cash is so different, and we didn't have credit card when I first came from when I was in China. So credit card concept is different, and what is a browser? Why are they trying? So many things that you need to learn. From both searching for jobs and a culture perspective, right? It's a very unique experience. Every day is new. When I first came here, because my major was English, but still I was having a lot of challenges. I know the words, but I don't know the meaning. For example, when people talk about maple leaves, right? I was like, you guys don't really know the English grammar, right? Why do you say maple leaves? Why don't you say Leaves? And instead of using maple leaves? That's such a wrong grammar. And then what? Why is it so important? Everybody's so passionate about it. So that's the first thing, right? And I'm going to come back to you. So when you were going through the language barriers, so what were the initial steps that how was it in your mind? Like, what was the thought process to tackle this language issue that you were facing?
First of all, I think I realized the importance of language, because if you don't have a way to communicate with others, you're actually limited. You are kind of imprisoned because you cannot reach out with your communication skills to get to the word that you want to be. Like, for example, if you're on a job but you cannot use effective communication with your customer and with your colleagues and your managers, they won't know your potentials. They won't understand where you want to develop yourself. So language is very important. And the second thing I do, I am very interested in learning language. This is probably my strength. So from the point that I landed in Canada, I never give up on continue improving my language, my English. And I felt a lot of joy with every single step of my improvement, which is great, right? The third thing is that I realized that language, after all, is just a tool. It's not your ultimate goal, but it's a tool that you have to have in order to discover the world. So you, at a point of time, you have to look up from language itself and started to use that to actually do something. Actually, Toastmaster gave me a very good platform from back then. I use that to improve my English, but also that's the time and that's the platform for me to make friends and explore culture in Canada.
So Annie, in your bio, we noticed that you were very shy and introverted, right? And I think the situation is the same for a lot of immigrants, right? Coming from another culture might be a more introverted culture and come to Canada, which is an extrovert ideal culture. So how did you step out of your comfort zone? Psychologically, what was the journey that you went through to go through that and in a really not afraid of making mistakes and try something new?
I used to think that being shy and introvert is a disadvantage. So then you kind of stuck with yourself. You're always lack of the courage that you need to do whatever you want, right? So to overcome that, it takes courage and effort and continuous practice, I would say. So if you wanted to get an interview, of course you have to push yourself against your shyness and your introversy to get out and make those phone calls. It is very, very hard, but you have to do it. But trust me, if you continue doing it, you'll get thick skin and you're actually getting better with it, right? But
Yeah.
on the way, on continue fighting with it and improving with myself, I realized it's actually a gift to be introvert, because you have to look back and realize your true strength. Extrovert, they have their own strengths, right? I'm not living in their world, but I know they do. But introvert, don't look down to yourself, right? You're gonna have to find the true strengths out of you. When you're away and be very quiet with yourself, I believe there's a lot of great things happening in your mind, but you need that light and channel that you're gonna speak up when you need to. So when you go to an interview, that's your shine time. You're not gonna allow shyness and introversy to stop you on doing that. That's the purpose. So when you practice, keep your identity, keep yourself proud to be introvert, but you're gonna have to enhance your ability to talk when you need to.
Thank you. That's a lot of great points there. And I'm sure Hattie has a lot to say about on this topic. I'm just going to pass on to
Yeah,
you.
so unlike Annie, I grew up in a very extrovert culture. I am very introvert myself, but I grew up in a country where everybody is an extrovert. And moving to Canada, where it is more or less in the workplace and outside of the workplace, an extrovert culture. And I would say the more you learn, if anyone on the call is an introvert, the more you learn about it, the more you would actually embrace it and the more you see it as an advantage. And as long as you're conscious of how being an introvert is perceived, because sometimes in the workplace in Canada, if you are a quieter person and your colleagues still don't know you, it may seem as you're disengaged, it may seem as you're not very much knowledgeable about the conversation if there's a group meeting and you're not participating, whereas you might actually be the most knowledgeable person in the room about it, but you're just not comfortable speaking up. So it depends, even for people who are not comfortable with their language. We're speaking about introvert, but for a newcomer, it could be they're expert about the topic, they're not comfortable speaking up. And these are things, as long as you are conscious about them, you prepare about them. As Annie mentioned, with practice, you will overcome them and you would know what makes you comfortable and how to actually thrive through these differences.
Yeah, I think it, very good point, because, like Annie mentioned, that people might really force themselves to go into the interview, right, and prepare again and again. But what we tend to see is, because you touched on the career piece, what we tend to see is people from different cultures, they might be very quiet once they get hired. And from employers' perspective, we know at RBC we champion diversity and inclusion, and we want to promote people from immigrants, right? People from different diverse community and diverse background into leadership position. But a lot of times we face the challenge that some immigrant employees, they're very quiet, right? So from the employer's perspective, if you don't speak up, you don't stand out of your comfort zone and speak up and show your value, it'll be very hard for your employer to see what kind of strengths and knowledge and skills you have, and really develop you in that sense.
And even before you get to be employed as well, like in your first few months in Canada when you're looking for a job, we may assume that basically searching only online is enough in countries like Canada, and as it's so easy to apply online, there are thousands and millions of people applying online like you are, and as you would be new to the country and you don't have kind of Canadian employers on your resume or recognizable brand names on your resume, kind of being aware that whether you're an introvert, you're comfortable speaking, or all of these things, building your network becomes important, and coming out of your shell to meet people and differentiate yourself from an online resume becomes becomes very, very important.
We know the majority, even though I mean, you all have to apply jobs online, but the majority of jobs are actually acquired by networking. You know someone who knows maybe the hiring manager or who can refer you to a recruiter. And then first of all, you have to have the skills and the experience we're looking for, but that extra step of networking really help you. And we have talked about this in our previous webinars. So that's very important. And, you know, networking is very scary for me as well. Sometimes you just need to, you know I do workshops and the webinars encourage you guys to do network, but I think I'm in between introvert and extrovert. I don't enjoy loud networking events because I don't think sometimes I can make a real connection with people that way, but a lot of times it is how you take it and who you want to make the real connection with. It's about a conversation and not the platform. I have learned in my own journey that way. So I want to ask, you know, I think Annie, you briefly touched on the language, but I want to really talk about the difference between language and the communication. Because a lot of immigrants would, you know, naturally assume that because the language is English is not our first language, right? Therefore, we can never be as a good communicator as people who are native speakers, and that's absolutely not true. All right. Because language is language, and sometimes you can still be a very good communicator, even if you speak with an accent. I remember when I told the story to some people before. My son grew up here, and his English is perfect. So when I was looking for a job, I asked him and say, "Can you help me with my pronunciation?" And then he would be very mean. He would say, "Mom, where do you want me to start?" So, okay, so of course that gave me hope in finding employment, but actually later on through my own experience, I learned that you can still be a very good communicator. It's about how you make the connection, right? So I'm going to pass on to my two guests to elaborate a little bit on that. I'm going to go with you, Henry, first.
So
yeah.
it's a very important topic. I would say once you're able to speak and like basic communications in most companies, at least at RBC, nobody cares about your accent. I used to be conscious that I have a different accent, and now like this is my accent. It's not gonna change.
This is who you are, right?
Especially if we move to Canada at a later age. But even being new and not knowing all the vocabulary could actually be an advantage, because it forces you to use concise language and not to use basically terminology that anybody can speak. Sometimes with my colleagues who were born here, when they are communicating, they may use some words that not everybody in the room would understand, whereas somebody new to the country with a more limited vocabulary, it might be good. The other thing would be if you prepare what you're going to say, if you prepare a little bit before meetings, and you would have overcome all these barriers, because these barriers would be mostly in our minds. Most of our colleagues don't really care if we have a stronger non-Canadian accent or not.
Exactly. So we are setting the barriers for ourselves. We talk about unconscious bias all the time, but we actually a lot of times we have unconscious bias towards ourselves. And if we have that mindset towards ourselves, when we are hiring other people, we're going to apply that to other people, which can be very not fair, right? To other people. And Hadi mentioned about the communication. Sometimes, so we chatted about it. So being an immigrant, you can really, it's how you look at it, right? It's about the mindset, and communication, what's the point of business communication? Is being concise, being clear, being concise and accurate, right? And as an immigrant, because of our limited English vocabulary, we will try to search for words that most accurately explain the context. And if you look at the world and the best communications, some of them, most of them, the effective communications or strategies, they use very, very simple words to achieve the purpose, such as Nike, just do it, right? So everybody gets an Apple, in a lot of their communications and the innovations, it's just because how simple it is for the user, for all the users to actually adapt. So Annie, I'm going to pass on to you to talk a little bit about your experience in language and what it takes to be a good communicator, both at work and in life.
I just recently came across this topic with a friend I met over the weekend. He's a native speaker. I told him after I've been in Canada for such a long time, I'm still struggling with a grammar error-free sentence when I'm speaking. And he said, don't worry about it. And he said, communication finds its own way if you are willing to communicate with somebody. So language is not a problem, but your willingness to communicate with the person you want to communicate is the thing. I want to share a very funny story. So when I I live in an Italian community actually. My parents came to visit me and they don't speak English at all, right? And one morning I stood in my kitchen outside the window. I saw my parents were talking to my Italian neighbor. And the lady there who didn't speak English well either. So, but they were talking about planting flowers in the ground, etc. They were so engaged in the conversation. When they came back, I asked them, right? I said, you guys don't speak English. How could you do this thing? But they just used a lot of body language and gestures and pointing here, pointing there, the height of the plant, how to dig the soil, all of those. They just communicated that way. So that's the point, because language is only taking about 30% of your communication. Everything else take about 70%. If you are a member of Toastmasters, they will tell this to you over and over again. When you're standing on a stage to deliver a speech, the words you were using just 30%, but they're gonna see your body language, your eye contact, your facial expression, your tone of voice. All of those have to be taken in consideration. So when you are communicating either with a bigger group or with one-on-one, put your language in a small proportion to worry about, but focus on the attitude, the energy, and people can connect without talking just by looking at each other's energy level, right? If you make eye contact, you probably would know a percentage of this person already if you open your heart to really feel it. So communication is way beyond language level. In your real life, I might suggest, like Vivian, you mentioned a few words that's really critical in a business world. But in the real life, when you are doing any kind of communication, make sure you have your openness, your honesty, and your positive attitude, right? People would embrace all of those and willing to communicate with you, and things will get easier if you can do that.
Yeah, definitely agree with a lot of the points you just mentioned, because I sit in recruitment and I talk to recruiters all the time and some hiring managers, right? And sometimes, the positive, if someone had a great interview, the recruiters, they say, oh, you made my day, right? And you have brought such positive energy into the conversation. I really like you, and I'm sure you can build a great relationship with the customer. So it is the energy that you bring into the communication that matters a lot. right?
Mhm.
And also sometimes we feel, you know, as immigrant, as someone who came from a country where, you know, the communication that in my home country, we never were developed to say build your communication skills, because it is just the culture norm that if you don't know the perfect answer, you don't speak up, right? However, in Canada, you are encouraged to share your diverse perspectives and to show your value, even though maybe in the end, your perspective is not adopted as the final solution, but you still contributed. So that is something I really think is very important for our immigrant friends to know, not only in the interview, but in your career, in the job, to really participate and share your perspective and add value to the team. Yeah. So, Hattie, do you have anything to add in terms of the adjusting the culture? Because you came and you got hired as an intern, and your career progressed quite, you know, smoothly. Being in a director. So, what did you encounter some barriers in your career development, or do you foresee anything as because you're your immigrant or culture background, or what some of the advice you can give to our audience?
I think so. Some of the advice that I would give definitely to the audience when you move to a new country, it's important to start working and get an experience. And sometimes what you would hear is finding the first job maybe difficult. So I started, for example, when I moved here in the lowest possible position.
You got a PhD,
and I had previous work experience, and I was happy to start with basically the bottom as an internship here to get an understanding of corporate culture, to get an understanding of how things work in Canada. And then so my advice would be, if you're moving to Canada and searching for a job, don't wait until you have a senior job. If you do start with at the beginning with a more junior job, you will be progressing faster because that experience will show up and will come up afterwards. So start somewhere. That would be a tip as well. Definitely, and then once you start, you will see the company culture, and you will see how you would progress. But one of the things that in many countries, especially in my country, whether many people don't think of talking about their work beyond their immediate manager, and we would assume that if my manager knows that I'm doing a good job, then I shouldn't tell anybody else.
Yeah.
And as you know, Vivian, in many places in Canada, it's very different. The more you tell your story to others, the more it would help you, and it would help them, and it would help the company, and that's a big shift to adjust to.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got to be able to tell your achievement, your story, your passion, or even what you're looking for your next career move, right? Be very, very proactive about that, right? Yeah. So how about you, Annie, on your side, what are some of the career advice that you can give to our candidates? I mean, moving up, not only finding a job, but in the career development, in the corporate world, what have you learned?
For me, there's no difference about in the career path or the life path. It's always the same, right? It's always focusing on personal growth. I understand our new immigrants just landed here, probably going through a tough time with a lot of unexpected things going on, right? You don't know what your future would be. You are trying to strike for your first job, right? I would say that don't complain on things that you don't have, but focus on the things you already have, your strengths, right? Your knowledge on something you are good at it, and then continue working on this path. Don't easily give up. That's the thing, and you will feel it in your career life on the way. You're developing yourself. You're striking for every single improvement of yourself. You will feel where is the right direction. But don't let those negative thoughts or a temporary failure to let you down, because you're going to have some of those on this path, right? You will get rejections, all the time if you going through interviews, not only new immigrants. Like now I have friends being laid off, they continue looking for a job for close to a year. Like thinking about how much of the stress they are going through because they've been in the workforce for such a long time and now they have to look again. It's not an easy way for them too. So for newcomer, it's a brand new starting point. You don't have anything to compare before. You just strike for whatever is better for you now. So I would say confidence and courage is a great thing and try to persistent on what you wanted to do. At the same time, I would suggest everybody just reach out to the world. And I would recommend Toastmaster one more time. This is a good place to learn English and build networking as well. If you are looking and you don't have a job to go to keep you super busy and you have to commute to your work, etc., this is something you will be able to meet people and get your English going and learn about the language and build your confidence as well.
Thank you, Annie. And I just want to stress that Toastmasters is a nonprofit organization and is not making any money promoting the organization.
I'm not a salesperson either, but it's really beneficial that I want to mention that.
Yeah, so one thing as I was listening to Annie, and something I want to mention is so as an immigrant, you feel that you're at the disadvantage. But if you look at things from the other perspective, there are a lot of positive aspect to it. For example, you come to a new country, you have the opportunity to completely start a new career. Look for something you're really passionate about and not to get stuck in the same old job, when you have had in the last 20, 30 years. That's a good very, very exciting thing to look forward to. And I also sometimes I would say, hey, I'm English is not my first language, so I have all the excuse to make mistakes, right? People would forgive me. So if I'm speaking my native language, I'll be more nervous going to Toastmasters because I'm expected as a higher level. So you think about those things from a different perspective that will, really take you out of your comfort, take you into a different place and the way you think about things, right? So time really flies. Before I pass on to Sonia, I have one more point to make. To be a proud Canadian and to have that sense of belongings, what would be a better way to go out today and support our Raptors, right? That you will feel among all the Canadians, like not only like the people who have lived here in their whole life, but there's so many immigrants and newcomers just like yourself. They are coming out and celebrating themselves as being a Canadian and supporting our team.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
in.
So amazing. I know how you're just 10 minutes away from the Jurassic Park, right?
Watching and celebrating for sure.
Yeah, so fingers crossed for our team. So I'm going to pass it back to Sonia. I'm sure there are some questions for our guests.
Yes, thank you, everyone. It was great just getting to know you better and hearing about your journeys as newcomers. I'm sure a lot of people are inspired, and there's lots of questions here. So, everyone, I'll give you a few moments to type in your questions and let me know if it's directed to anyone or is it directed specifically to one of the people on the panel today. So, I'm going to leave this screen on while everyone gets a chance to answer some questions. So Sarah Zhang wants to know a little bit more about Toastmasters. And would you be able to just tell her if it's free or, how do you go about taking these courses?
Toastmaster has a membership fee, which is around 100 to 200 per year. So it's very, very low. For me, it is the most economical but effective learning training kind of a program. If you wanted to take a further step, just search on Google for Toastmasters club near me. and you will find those. Just step into their meeting or contact them with the contact information on the website. They will guide you through the whole process. It's very easy. It's a very friendly environment.
I just
Awesome.
want to add to that, you can actually visit it club 3 times free at least, right? Some allow you to
She's been
visit
there.
as many times as you want, but you know, if you want to see which one is your favorite, you can actually explore all the Toastmasters free for 3 times.
Yeah, you can shopping around to find the right group for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for adding that, Vivian. I'm sure that's valuable information for everyone. Another question here, I guess it goes out to all of you, from Pai Lin Wang, wants to know, while looking for a sales-related job, communication seems to be the key essential requirement. So how do we show our capability of communication as a newcomer, if they're comparing themselves to a local native speaker who speaks English very fluently?
Well, different sales jobs, they require different skills and different languages. At RBC, for example, in every line of business in our company, coming from a different country and having different language skills
It's a very
is actually a very advantage
yeah.
that the people who grew up here would not have,
Yeah.
as we would have clients from every language that we would want to reach. And so actually coming in might be an advantage, and having that X. So I would say emphasize for sales roles. A lot of sales roles in Canada require language skills. Emphasize on the additional language skills that you have rather than the lack of English that you still need to learn and master more.
Yeah, definitely, I do agree. And like Annie mentioned, it's more about communication and how when you do sales, the most important thing is about connecting with the customer, right? So there are so many ways that you connect with the customer. Your passion shows, your knowledge of the product shows. So, and sometimes the way you handshake your customer shows how they appreciate and about the way you service them. So there's so many different, and also the backgrounds, your sales background from home country, that also help you a lot. Yeah. So do not be intimidated by the fact that your English is not first language.
Thank you. Another question here from Aditya, who is a PR card holder and will be coming to Canada soon. Currently, he's working in India in senior IT position and wants to know if RBC recruits newcomers in that sector.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We actually are having a newcomer event. I just posted just before this webinar on July the 10th. We're always looking for people with global perspectives because we're building our technology-enabled bank, and we need people with global experience, especially in IT, right? You don't really need a so-called Canadian experience, right? Because coding is coding.
True. Thank you. Annie, this question's for you. Pailin Wang wants to know, how do you keep up your motivation when you encounter frustrations caused by cultural barriers?
To keep up your motivation, one of the good things is to be with the right people. You have you can form I know you come here, you probably don't have a lot of friends, but you're gonna have to make some friends. I remember when I just arrived here, I actually got to know other new immigrants who were in the same workshops with me all together. So were experiencing the same difficulty. We encourage each others to continue going. I hope you find someone here with you. They could be the person who talk to you and keep you motivated and or share that journey together with you. I believe this world is not like you cannot achieve anything by yourself. You really have to make a connection and use some collaboration with all the people around you and make sure you find the right one. If you find those people who are constantly an inspiration for you, or you have some role model that who has been here for a while, found a job, become accomplished, follow their footsteps and try to talk to them and make them your mentor even. and those people would be really helpful for you to go through any difficulties.
Wow, thank you. I hope that motivates Piling over here as well. Another question here from Lily. Good question. She says, as another important part of communication skills, how should we improve our writing skills?
Writing skill, you have to write more. You have to keep on writing. For me, writing is not that difficult to compare with verbal English. I think verbal is even more challenging because you don't have a lot of time to prepare. Whatever in your mind, whatever the language and vocabulary you have to speak up right at the moment. But to improve verbal, you can go back to writing, right? If you write more, it definitely gonna improve the whole range of your English capability. But writing, if you want to aim for anything high end, I would say you have to go study somewhere, like in a school, or have a tutor to coach you through the details of writing. That would be my suggestion.
I
Thank
would
you,
just
Annie. Yeah,
I
go
would
ahead,
just
Vivian.
add the point that read more, because we're in such a social media space that people don't read a lot of books anymore. We're just so addicted to our phones, right? But actually reading books, choose a topic that you're interested in, and pick some good books in English. That will help.
Thank you. Hadi, maybe you can answer the next question here from Serena. What advice tips would you give to new immigrants to understand Canadian culture better or easier?
The only way you understand it is by experiencing it. So as soon as you arrive, I would say try to meet as many people. Many of us here arrive with no friends and no family, and try to go to events, talk to as many people, and then by experiencing it, you would understand it well. So some of the websites that I remember relying on very much when I moved here to meet new people were meetup.com. Anything you're interested in, a certain sport, a certain technology, you would find other people in the city that are interested in the same thing, and that would help you kind of start talking to people. And another, Internations as well is a great community of expat Canadians as well. I would recommend you check these two and start experiencing it.
Thank you, Hadi. So Vivian, just talking about that newcomer event, is it, can you provide some more details, like where it's located? And if you, have you shared it on your LinkedIn, you said?
Yeah, I did just post it on my LinkedIn. We're going to have so many newcomer events coming up. The most immediate one is the one in Mississauga. We're going to do one for sales and service roles in Mississauga for our advice and insurance roles. And the next one would be July the 10th for IT specific. It'll be downtown Toronto.
Nice.
So you will need to go to our website and just register. And then we, because the limited space, we would, ask our recruiters to go through your resume and invite those who we want to have further conversation with.
Thank you, Vivian. It would be great if you could send me these as well, so we can send it to our clients at ACCES as well, so they can take advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so it is almost time to wrap up. I guess I'll take one more question here. All right, so this is an interesting question about communication again. So Doral wants to know, can you talk about how Canadians express using body language, like gestures, body language? Maybe you have an experience that you can talk about.
I don't know. I don't think Canadians are as strong or big body language
Or
as
like
some other
how
cultures.
your cultural body language is a little bit different from Canadian cultural body language.
So I would say I come from a culture where we would use our hands more, we would use our entire body to communicate, and tell something, what do you think of it? And I feel in Canada, this is not as strong as I would say South American cultures or Middle Eastern cultures where we're all moving to talk.
So
I think
I think well, we do go out to our hiring managers community and let them know that people from certain cultures, we're not used to have direct eye contact. Not used to, it's direct eye contact. It's a sign of integrity and honesty and confidence in Canada. However, in certain culture, is not having direct eye contact shows respect. Right, so those are very important to know that in Canada you're expected to have direct eye contact to show that you're honest, not to avoid contests, because in certain culture I know that in certain cultures not having direct eye contact means you're humble, you're respectful to senior people, right? Yeah, so just practice that in front of the mirror. How about me?
I think there's like a comfortable distance is different. Like in China, we tend to leave a distance between like the two persons speaking, right? But in Canada, that distance probably get significantly shortened. So you will find someone just talk to you very close, like in a very close distance. That's possible because it's not like he's trying to offend you or anything, but it's a culture based gesture. Just try to get comfortable with that. And facial expression too. I think in China, like when we speak, we tend to not make a lot of facial expressions. But in the Western world, when they're speaking English, there's a lot of facial expression. So if you are practicing your English, especially for people from Asia, you can face the mirror and then try to add some facial expressions. That would be making your English actually more impressive.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all your tips, everyone. I'm just going to go over a few more slides if you can stay on with us. So again, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Vivian, Hadi, and Annie for sharing your expertise and advice with everyone. I'm just going to go over a few slides and I'll let you say a few words before we sign off. If anybody has any more questions about building a resume, interview tips, networking, understanding the Canadian culture at work, you can check out our website and click on ACCES, and you can click on any one of these tiles. We have loads of information, new articles, past webinars. You can even check out past RBC webinars on our website as well. And our next RBC webinar is on June 27th, hosted by Jane Chen. And she's going to be talking about how to invest with confidence. And RBC is here to give you some tips. So take advantage of that as well. And our next webinar coming up is on next Monday, June 17th. It's from CPA again. So if you're interested in getting your CPA in Canada, you can log in, tune in to find out more information. And if you are a PR card holder and you're on your way to Canada within the next few months and you fall under any of these sectors, you can email CEC at accessemployment.ca and they can start helping you with your job search before you even come to Canada. And add us on Instagram. So we are now on Instagram and very much active all over our social media. So if you want to know what's going on at ACCES, follow us on our social media, that being Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So like Vivian said, she has posted some upcoming events on her LinkedIn. We do the same. So anything that's coming up at ACCES, you probably won't see it on our website. You'll see it most likely on our LinkedIn page. If it's happening, whether it's in-house or whether it's online, in person, or a different employer venue, it'll be posted on our social media. So again, thank you so much, Vivian, Annie, and Hattie. Is there anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
Okay, so just the final words. I hope the discussion is beneficial to you. I think by the end of the day, I want to encourage everybody to step out of your comfort zone, not only mingle with your own community, try to learn different cultures. We have such a unique opportunity to learn every parts of the world, actually in Canada, right? It's such a unique privilege to take advantage of that. But in the end, stay true to your heritage, stay true to who you are as the country you're coming from and as a new Canadian. I mean, as you're growing as a person. At RBC, we do believe your difference is your strength.
Yeah, I would say moving to Canada is one of the most exciting things and that you would do in your life. So even if it comes with some difficulties, enjoy the whole process.
Yeah, I would say the best wishes for everyone on your new journey. Like, try to embrace everything here and be open to the changes, to the differences, and be strong.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great day or evening ahead, and we'll see you next time.